On today's edition of Steelers Talk, as NFL Sunday begins to wind down here in Week 16, could the Pittsburgh Steelers be bringing back Diontae Johnson after trading him earlier this offseason? I'll break that down at the top of today's show. Also, Joey Porter Jr., we got an injury update on him, as well as the other injured starters on the Pittsburgh Steelers, such as George Pickens, DeShon Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi, and others. Speaking of injuries, there's a major Chiefs injury that could affect the outcome of Wednesday's Christmas Day game with the former champs. And then to finish up today's show, I got more takeaways from Saturday's loss versus the Baltimore Ravens. So make sure you stick around for my updated takeaways after I've had the opportunity to watch the film. So how are you guys feeling? Let me know down there in the comments section. After losing to the Baltimore Ravens, you've had some time to enjoy some NFL football today, to sleep on it. How are you feeling about this football team right now? Percent chance that the Pittsburgh Steelers win a playoff game this year. Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance they win a playoff game, to 100%, meaning we're definitely winning a playoff game. Let me know your feeling to kick off today's show. So let's start here with the biggest rumor floating around Steelers, the Steelers sphere out there, which is that Ian Rappaport suggested yesterday that the Pittsburgh Steelers may consider claiming wide receiver Diontae Johnson for the rest of the season off of waivers after he was released by the Baltimore Ravens late last week. So this offseason, the Pittsburgh Steelers, by their own attrition here, traded Diontae Johnson away to another team, the Carolina Panthers. And, I thought he played pretty decently with the Carolina Panthers this year. Then he ended up getting traded to Baltimore, where everything just was, it never got going. I think he had one catch on his entire Baltimore Ravens tenure, and it just never really got going there with the Ratbirds. And, Pittsburgh reportedly unloaded Johnson this offseason because they felt like he wasn't a good influence on the locker room. He wasn't a good locker room guy, and he wasn't a good influence on George Pickens, who they viewed as a moldable, kind of younger receiver that they thought Juice wasn't really being a good influence on him. So they ended up trading him away. And of course, they didn't have the backup plan to get his replacement at wide receiver 2. And with George Pickens hurt, that has certainly hurt them down the stretch, not having a guy like Diontae Johnson in this locker room. So from a football perspective here, it definitely makes sense to bring back Diontae Johnson. He's familiar with the building. He's familiar with the way that this team goes about their business, all this different stuff. Plus, he is still a very, very good route runner. I thought he was actually doing some really good stuff in Carolina before he was traded to the Baltimore Ravens this year. And you look at his route running chart last year, guys, this guy was one of the best route runners in football, and it's every single type of route, man. He's got the entire route tree at his disposal, and with guys like George Pickens out with injury right now, Diontae Johnson was this team's most productive receiver last year, and he missed a significant portion of the season with a hamstring injury. So Diontae is absolutely somebody that can be a potential safety blanket for Russell Wilson and be a number one receiving option here if George Pickens goes down with injury, God forbid, in the postseason. Plus, I think that it's very high upside because, like I said, man, he is familiar with the people in the building. Now, he's not familiar with the offense. He's not familiar with Russell Wilson as his quarterback, but also it's low downside. If he comes in and he's a problem and he's causing issues with the locker room and all this stuff, you can just cut him loose, no questions asked. And, it's not going to cost you any money in dead cap, or it's not going to cost you anything in terms of dead cap in future seasons. So, getting a guy like this that has a really good skill set and has been productive with this football team before makes sense from a football perspective. However, this isn't Madden, all right? This isn't something where you're not where it's like Madden and you're just bringing in a player, all right, and a guy with an overall, right? You're bringing in a human being that you traded for pretty much nothing. I know Donte Jackson is a decent player here in Pittsburgh, but you pretty much trade Diontae Johnson for nothing because the Carolina Panthers were ready to cut Donte Jackson, and the Steelers could have had him in free agency. So the Steelers pretty much said, we just want this guy out of our locker room. And, it's definitely possible that bridge is burnt between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Diontae Johnson. Now, Diontae was very favorable of Pittsburgh. He said he loved living here. He loved playing for Mike Tomlin. When he was asked about it before the Steelers played Baltimore the first time around, he was very complimentary of the Steelers and of Pittsburgh. So it certainly seems like Diontae would be fine coming back here to Pittsburgh. But the question is, do the Steelers want to bring in a guy that apparently quarreled with Minkah Fitzpatrick last year? Has had issues with certain people in the Steelers locker room. Will the Steelers leadership in terms of their captains be okay bringing in a guy like Diontae Johnson? That is going to be the question. Plus, I don't really think he'd be ready to play for the Steelers on Christmas. That's such a quick turnaround. If he's picked up on waivers tomorrow, he has a brand new playbook to learn. Remember, Arthur Smith was not the offensive coordinator here last year, so Diontae isn't really familiar with this offense. The first time that we would see him would be in probably the season finale against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm pretty sure George Pickens is expected to be back by that time. So we'll cover George Pickens' injury update here in just a second, but it does sound like GP will be back by week 18. And, the reason why I want this to happen is because Andrew Filipponi, he tweeted this out last night. He says, "I'll get my nipples pierced on live radio if the Steelers bring back Diontae Johnson. It ain't happening." So listen, man, we know Filipponi's been wrong on a lot of stuff, and I'm really hoping he's wrong on this one because that would be just unbelievable radio right there to see that guy scream. Okay, so now, just keep in mind here, guys, that the waiver deadline to pick up Diontae Johnson is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So, set your alarms there because that is the point where we're going to learn if anybody picks up Diontae on the waiver wire. I'm pretty sure that he will. There's a lot of teams currently in the playoff picture that could certainly be looking to add receiver help. Some teams to watch out for, the Houston Texans. They just lost Tank Dell for the rest of the season. Prayers to him, by the way. Really hoping that he makes a full recovery because he's a good young man. He's a good player. Really hoping he can get back on the field soon. But Houston could certainly use a guy like Diontae Johnson, who's got a very similar skill set to Tank Dell. As kind of a route-running technician. I think that Houston would probably be very interested in him. Then the Washington Commanders, they could certainly use another receiver in that room as well beside Terry McLaurin. So keep your eye on those two. But I think Houston is probably going to end up getting him. I think that's the most likely destination. I'd probably put the likelihood in terms of my top 3 teams that are going to claim Diontae Johnson. Number 1, Houston Texans. Number 2, Washington Commanders. And number 3, Pittsburgh Steelers. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Would you claim Diontae Johnson off of waivers by tomorrow afternoon? Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show, so YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or a no. So it's, on the bad news kind of side here, man, Joey Porter Jr. is feared to have a PCL injury in his knee, and it's causing pain in his calf. So he originally left the game on Saturday with what was being designated as a calf injury because it was hurting. But by the end of the game, they changed it to a knee designation. They believe it's a PCL. Nick Farabaugh from Penn Live tweeted this out last night, says the Steelers are worried that Joey Porter Jr. suffered a PCL injury, sources tell Penn Live. So that's obviously not what you want to hear if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, because Joey Porter Jr. is so important to this defense, man. And it really would limit what the Steelers can do schematically if you don't have Joey Porter Jr. out there, because he is the enforcer on this Steelers defense. And what that means is that, you put him on one-on-one on an island, which allows the rest of the defense to shift their coverage to the other side of the formation. He's also somebody that's very good in zone coverage as well. Now, is he a bit grabby? Is he a bit physical? Yeah, but he's your enforcer. And if you go up against a legit, big, physical number 1 receiver, Joey Porter's the type of body type that you want facing off against that player. And right now, both Joey Porter Jr. and Donte Jackson are dealing with injuries, which means James Pierre and Corey Trice Jr. is the next line of defense at the cornerback position. Of course, you got Cam Sutton, who has a little bit of experience on the outside, and then Beanie Bishop Jr. is a true slot corner. So listen, man, if you take away Joey Porter Jr. in this defense, you pretty much have to play exclusively zone coverage, especially if you're going up against a legit alpha-type number 1 receiver on the outside that has some size, because even when you get Donte Jackson back, he's not that big. He's not that good in man coverage, and then Corey Trice Jr. did not look good whatsoever against Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers on Saturday. I don't necessarily trust him to play this role either. So losing Joey Porter Jr., if it is for the rest of the season, whatever the updates are moving forward, I'm really hoping that he's back for the postseason, because this defense is a lot better when he's out there. And the guys that are questionable to play, according to Mike Tomlin at his weekly press conference today, Joey Porter Jr. will be questionable. Same thing with Ben Skoranek, who left the game with a hip injury. Both of these guys actually came back to play in that game and then left the game again. So Tomlin said it's probably unlikely that these two guys end up playing just because they're dealing with injuries on a short week. So I wouldn't expect JPJ or Skoranek on the field on Wednesday afternoon. But the guys that Tomlin said have a real shot to play, George Pickens, DeShon Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi, and Donte Jackson, are all potentially going to play on Wednesday on Christmas Day. Now, the Steelers need to win both of their remaining 2 games to lock up the AFC North, so you better believe that if I can quote Mike Tomlin, healthy people are going to play in this football game. Now, still to come here on Steelers Talk, a major Chiefs player was injured on Saturday versus the Texans. I'll reveal who that is and why they may not play on Wednesday, and then also more takeaways from Week 16 after watching the film. But before we get into that, make sure you guys click that subscribe button for daily Steelers news and rumors videos. We give you guys the latest Steelers news every single day on this channel for free. Also, we have weekly live shows. We're going to be going live tomorrow, Monday, starting at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's all 100% free, guys. We're over 72,000 strong here on Steelers Talk. We're the largest individually run Steelers news channel here on the YouTube platform. That's because of your guys' support. So make sure you click that subscribe button right now to never miss a video. So Chris Jones is obviously a superstar defensive tackle, and obviously that Chiefs defense is a lot better when he is that presence in the middle, just wrecking football games. Well, he had a little bit of a calf strain versus the Texans on Saturday afternoon in their win over Houston. And according to the people on the ground there in Kansas City, he is pretty unlikely to play on Wednesday because Kansas City is trying to make sure that he is available for the postseason. Of course, they're sitting right now at 14-1 or 13-1. I can't remember. They only have one loss. They're doing a really good job, and they're just trying to make sure that Chris Jones, this game-wrecking presence, is available to them. So that should be good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, whether they have George Pickens, whether they don't have George Pickens, not having to face Chris Jones and having to face that menacing pass rusher in the middle certainly should help out Russell Wilson's pass protection. It should help out the effort to get the run game going on Wednesday. So if Chris Jones can't play on Wednesday, that's obviously a big help to the Steelers to potentially get a win versus the former champs on Christmas Day. So now let's talk about more Week 16 takeaways here. You guys got my takeaways yesterday after the game was over, but I got some more after watching the film here. The first one is that the back end of the defense just couldn't hold up. You had James Pierre, Corey Trice Jr., and DeMonte KZ, three backups back there. Minka was playing in the slot and in the box as the strong safety, and those three guys just couldn't hold up. And honestly, Beanie Bishop Jr. and Cam Sutton weren't holding up in the slot either. A tweet here from Steelers DB, otherwise known as Derek here. Give him a follow on Twitter, by the way. He does some really, really good stuff. I really like this tweet he put out yesterday. Lamar Jackson versus the Steelers under pressure was 2 for 8 for just 16 yards, but when he was kept clean, he was 14 of 16, 193 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then he added, when the Steelers pass rush one up front, the defense was pretty good. When they were stalled out, they got shredded on the back end, and I completely agree after watching the film earlier today, guys. The backups just got absolutely toasted when they went to man coverage. If you don't know anything about how the Steelers defend the Baltimore Ravens offense, they do a lot of blitzes and they do a lot of man blitzes, so they really trust their corners to hold up. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, their tight ends, were just killing these guys on the back end. Whereas earlier in the season, Joey Porter Jr. and Donte Jackson did a really, really good job in man coverage against these guys. And the numbers were what they were back at Acrisure Stadium. Now, the unfortunate truth here about the Steelers defense here, guys, is that until they get healthier, until they get Joey Porter Jr. back, Donte Jackson back, DeShon Elliott back, Larry Ogunjobi back, it's just you're going to have to play a bend, don't break style of defense. You're going to have to sit back in zone coverage, and you're going to have to try to mix things up a little bit. You're going to have to hope the pass rush gets through, and you're going to have to try to do some creative stuff, but you can't really go heavy man coverage like they did against the Ravens, especially if you play a team with multiple good receivers like the Baltimore team does. So that's just not something that you can do, and hopefully these guys can get back healthy so this team can mix things up and mix in man coverage a little bit more in the postseason. Another takeaway that I have here is that, the defense just ran out of gas, and once again, they ran out of gas against Philly and they ran out of gas against Baltimore just because, just the pure beating that they took over the last 2 weeks. Having to go to Philly and then on a technical short week and play Baltimore is not easy to do. And after playing Philly, guys, teams are 3-10, and that's just on a normal schedule, right? This isn't even accounting for having to play a game against another physical team on a short week. Like, teams just regularly do not win games the following week after Philly because they just beat the crap out of you. And then, this is just a brutal 2-game stretch because you had to go into Baltimore on a short week and you had to play the other really, really great run team in Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens. It was just a really, really tough scheduling thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And obviously, you were dealing with injuries during this stretch as well. No George Pickens, no DeShon Elliott, no Donte Jackson for a lot of it, no Joey Porter Jr. for the Ravens game. It was just a perfect storm of tough circumstances here that have led to an 0-2 stretch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then when it comes to Russell Wilson, guys, I blamed him for the loss in my postgame show yesterday, and I still stand by that take. But it was an outlier game for Russ, and I also pointed this out on the postgame show yesterday as well. Russ's 2 turnovers were clearly the turning points. I mean, he took points off the board when you fumbled the ball at the 5-yard line, and then obviously you put points on the board for Baltimore when you give up a pick 6. So obviously those 2 turnovers were absolutely massive and making the deficit look as bad as it did, 17-point deficit. But don't get used to Russell Wilson turning the ball over the way that he did this past week. Heading into the week here, Russell Wilson was first in the National Football League among quarterbacks in turnover-worthy play percentage. So that accounts for interceptions, dropped interceptions, fumbles, all these different things. And it's just 1.1% of his plays heading into the week were turnover worthy. So this is somebody with a top 5 interception percentage in the National Football League's history. He does not turn the ball over very often. Unfortunately, it was an outlier game against Baltimore, and that cost Pittsburgh the game. But despite everything that happened, guys, remember, Minkah Fitzpatrick had that interception in the 4th quarter, and the Steelers were in it. They were in this game, and it was a winnable football game despite everything, despite all the injuries, despite the fact that you're playing Baltimore 6 days after playing a super physical Philly team on the road, despite the fact that everything that was going against you in this football game. You were in the 4th quarter on the road against a title contender, and you had a chance to tie the football game in the 4th. All right, and obviously the pick 6 pretty much sealed it for Baltimore, and that sucks. All right, but like I said, I'm not expecting Russell Wilson to make those kinds of mistakes regularly as we approach postseason play. So listen, man, just imagine when and if the Pittsburgh Steelers get healthy. All right, this team is 5-0 when they're healthy against playoff caliber teams this year. And by the way, they beat playoff caliber teams like Denver and the Chargers with Justin Fields, the backup quarterback, at QB. Russell Wilson, he did some good things in this game. He's done some good things all season long. Obviously, the 2 turnovers suck, but overall, I still like what I'm seeing from Russell Wilson. And I think that once this team gets healthy, they're going to be just as dangerous as anybody in the AFC. And listen, man, if the Steelers get the Ravens again, bring them on, man. I like our chances. If Joey Porter Jr. is healthy, as producer Joey flips me off there, F Trader Joey's in the comments section, by the way. If you get Donte Jackson back, you get DeShon Elliott, you can play more man coverage against this team in the postseason. I don't think Lamar Jackson has a freaking shot in the postseason. And, honestly, if the Steelers would have beat the Ravens on Saturday, it's really tough to beat a team 3 times in one season. So I would have been a little bit worried if the Steelers had to go up against Baltimore in the postseason this year, because it's tough to beat a team 3 times. Now you've already lost your game to Baltimore, so now they're free to take down the Rapids in the postseason if it comes down to it. So let me know down there in the comments section. 2 games to go and a deadlock at the top of the AFC North. Let me know down there in the comments section who wins the division. Type PIT for the Steelers or type BAL for the Baltimore Ravens. So I know it's been a longer video today, guys, but but I got one more thing I want to talk about today. Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, the 2 guys that the Steelers had in their quarterback room last year that they replaced with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields this year, both played today for the Eagles and Titans respectively. And man, if you watch these guys play, it's pretty obvious that the Steelers made the right decision, at least in my opinion. You take a look here at the Week 16 stats. I mean, most of the completions and most of the yardage from Mason Rudolph was during garbage time. That team was down 30-7 against the Indianapolis Colts in that football game, guys. So, I mean, the 252 yards, a lot of that's garbage time. Touchdowns, most of that garbage time. Still threw 3 interceptions. And then Kenny Pickett, he had the best offensive line in the game. Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith, and he still only completed 58.3% of his passes. A lot of the yardage once Kenny Pickett came in was off of penalties on Marshawn Lattimore holding A.J. Brown, and it just wasn't a good day for either quarterback. So listen, man, good on Pittsburgh for making the right decision. I was saying it on this show last offseason. You got to replace these guys. Bring in Russell Wilson for the vet minimum, then trade for Justin Fields. They did exactly what I said they should do, and I think that was the best path forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, I think Russell Wilson, once he gets GP back, this offense is going to be humming again, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of this season right here with you guys on Steelers Talk. So make sure you guys spam those real ones down there in the comments section. If you're with this team no matter what, win, lose, or draw, Get those real ones down there in the comment section. I know it was a longer video today. There's so much to talk about on today's edition of Steelers Talk. But the real ones, they made it to the very end, man. So let me know who you are down there in the comment section by typing real one. And don't forget to click that subscribe button. We are going live tomorrow. If they claim Diontae Johnson off of waivers, we are going live then. Otherwise, we'll go live at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see you guys there. And until then, here we go, Steelers.